Hi Andy, I hope you're well. I'm gonna go through your swings here. I won't spend a ton of time on the upper body. You do have a good idea of what needs to happen. For the macro moves, you may have a little too flat, in my opinion, shoulders, especially compared to the amount of interior pelvic tilt that you have here. So you may be good toning it down a little bit. Try to have the belt buckle shooting here and trying to get a little bit more tilted shoulders, like trying to get your spine a little bit like that. You would benefit from it. You can look at my other videos on the subject. I have a ton of lessons that talk about this. But again, you're not really hurt by that. Quite frankly, you do manage to go into even more anterior pelvic tilt, and you do manage to right lateral bend from there. So, all in all, we know that these two motions are going to make your pelvis rotate a ton, and quite frankly, I don't think you could rotate the pelvis better with the upper body moves. I mean, the pelvis is going to be moved by what's above it and what's underneath it because we have feet on the ground, so we can push it or pull it or make it rotate using the hips. But considering what you can do with the upper body, you're pretty much maxed out on what you can do with your pelvis. So again, yeah, just a little introduction of what you could do better a little bit with the upper body. I think you could aim for a little less anterior pelvic tilt and a little bit more tilted shoulders, trying to bend your spine that way. That's for sure. You would benefit from a bigger rebound into right lateral bend and anterior pelvic tilt. But again, you kind of do these motions pretty well already. I do like your grip. It's very strong. This left shoulder is pretty neutral. It's not in external rotation. That would be the error. Having the elbow pit looking at us. It's not, so it's good. Right wrist is flexed, right forearm supinated. Again, strong position, that's good. You do have a very shut club face at the top, but it matches your grip, and you do pretty well rotating through. Um, Handling the club face properly, you would be classified as a knife edge release. Basically, that means that the left forearm is really not going from pronated to supinated at all. It stays pronated like that, and you kind of release in from radial deviation to ulnar deviation, like we can see here. It's all good. The club face is stable. There is not a ton of flip. There is not roll, so it's all right. Um, Really good job there. We're gonna take care of the lower body. There's a ton of things you could do better in this area. I'm gonna start with address because all the issues that are related to the lower body, if you keep that kind of stance, it's gonna be very difficult to do things properly. In my opinion, you're very wide. I can see it. It might be somewhat of a mid to long iron, maybe a 5 iron, something like that. But still, if you look at the toes, I mean, we're not supposed to look at stance width, like looking at the toes, but the thing is, you are wide and you have very flared out feet. So, like that, and the right foot especially, this makes things difficult. You cannot really use that foot to power your pelvis through using external rotation on the right hip. I'll get back to that. Left foot flared, yeah, I'm not a big advocate of that, but you can get away with it. Quite frankly, I would reduce the stance width to like here, here, and reduce the flare like half. Like get half as flared as you are, especially with the right foot. It's really not helping you. Okay, let's get to it. So, um, I really don't like the flared feet and the very wide stance, and I'll tell you why. Um, if you look at your toes, they are doing strange things because you're so much in there. In the heels, we can see the movement of the hip looking at your toes. So it's not something that we see quite often. But here we can see it. It's moving, and there too. If you look here at the takeaway, they are moving, and here in transition, it's moving. So that's something that actually I'm a little bit lucky to have that, because it really tells me what's happening in the hips. And you tend to do it like here. You start here, and then you go into your heels, and then you go. So yeah, a little idiosyncrasy from your part, but actually it makes my job easier. So we're gonna talk about left hip. Two dysfunctions. I mean, two. We're gonna take two looks. I mean, I'm gonna describe two consequences of it, and then we'll go into the right hip where we have more work. So, left hip. Here in the takeaway, as you can see, the patella, the kneecap, is not rotating here, and the toes are going that way. What tells me is that you're going into external rotation on this left hip, which could be acceptable, at least at first, in the takeaway. Really, quite frankly, there's no problem with that. But then you stay here, you stay. So the kneecap's not moving while the pelvis is rotating. So a few things happen. First, it really restricts your pelvic rotation to have that. Now you are flail like that. You were already very flare, but you get even more. So that restricts your pelvis a lot. What happens with that, with flexible guys like you that can still have a 90-degree shoulder turn, is that most likely the pelvis goes into anterior pelvic tilt, and here to balance it, the torso goes into a little bit more right lateral bend than it could. Imagine that much amount of anterior pelvic tilt and left lateral bend, you would fall on the ground. So that's I said I wasn't going to talk about the upper body much because what happens is really related to your lower body, but that's mainly how I would attack this problem of maybe a little lack of left lateral bend. I wouldn't try to correct by really focusing on your upper body moves. I would do it focusing on your lower body moves. Anyway, so that's problem one. That external rotation um, prevents you from having correct tilts here and left lateral bend and benefit it from um, the shift from left lateral bend to right lateral bend transition. You don't have that. You still manage to do well, so all in all, it's okay, but yeah, it could be better. We're gonna look at Bubba here. So, Bubba here, and then we'll say, you're welcome, Bubba, but I'm gonna put him with the driver because we'll see more movement, and I like rough edges and movements that don't fit the typical idea about the golf swing. And the thing is, they are anatomically correct, so that's really a good thing to look. Look at the setup. It's still driver is less flare than you and is almost, yeah, we could say is way narrower than you are. It's just a side note, but um, look at what happens in the left hip. I mean, it's right hip, but I flopped him so to the lead hip. So the lead hip is going into internal rotation. His pelvis is unrestricted, and if you imagine, like if this is going like that, what should happen to his heel? His heel should start. We should start seeing his heel here, like here, and we are not. Why is that? This is a little bit complex, but I'm sure you can handle it, because you already know so much working with Kelvin. But there is the spiral line that starts here in Bubba's left side of the neck. It goes around here, then external oblique, then here, left hip, fascia lata, and then it goes here. And that's why it gets into left lateral bend. So this line is tensed up and it pulls the left heel in and it prevents the left heel from appearing here. Okay, I stop with the details, but look at what happens in transition. Here, as soon as it'll go from left lateral bend to right lateral bend, he's going to replant closed, and he's going to replant with a kneecap that's beaten by the pelvic rotation. here his pelvis has rotated way more than the kneecap. So I understand that. Okay, Robin, but we see his kneecap is looking there towards the target. Sure it is. But the thing is that his pelvis rotated way more than the kneecap. So he's actually into internal rotation here on the left hip, and that gives him this crazy footwork and rotation that he gets through impact. I'm gonna get somebody that doesn't rotate well. Let's put Jamie Sedlowski. Just kidding. He's got exactly the same moves. So more moves, more movement, more understanding. But here, just watch. Internal rotation. The left knee is not going. The left heel is not going. It's, if anything, it's going that way. It's definitely not rotating that way like we could expect. That's again because of this spiral line that goes here, left neck, here, around, oblique externalis, then left hip, fascia lata, and then here, and it kind of makes the left heel rotate counterclockwise, like here, like that. That's why he gets into this position. Sneed had that to an extent. Hogan too. I mean, the legends really had that heel go there and not rotate there, even though they had a ton of internal rotation. So that's something that's really interesting. And if you look at transition, that's what happens. He replants closed. The kneecap is rotating, but way less than the pelvis. The pelvis is rotating all the way, and the kneecap just looks here. So what it tells us is that it's going into internal rotation, and then it's ready to fire, and it delivers through impact. And all the guys, all the foot, the feet that you see, the left feet that you see, either twisting like that and retracting. Some guys really rotate on the heel. Some guys rotate on the outside. Bubba, for example, would be on the toes, and he would rotate a little bit differently than other people, but that's what's happening. This is Bubba. Okay, let's put him here. Okay, so Bubba is on his toes, but it's the same rotation. He's in internal rotation like this. Okay, let's let him as a lefty. So it's still like that with the lead hip, and the pelvis has rotated way more away from the target. The target is here. I let Bubba play as a lefty. So target is here. The sacrum has moved back and away, so the pelvis is rotating a ton. And here, the femur has rotated the other way around, so the kneecap is still looking here. And then it will snap like that through impact. Okay, why do I say this? Because right now you don't have it, and you would rotate way better if you had it. So what we see here is, okay, so first the backswing, I would reduce the flare here. Definitely, I would reduce the stance width, and I would let that left knee come in slightly, not a ton. You don't have to do much, but like here, and if possible, bring the heel with it, and then what you will be able to do is to replant the foot closed. Let's get Jamie back here. Here you replant closed. If you look, heel is here, it's going to replant closed. They all have it to an extent. Because right now, this kneecap is moving way faster than the pelvis. If it's moving in the same direction, and it's moving faster than the pelvis. Here. That's not helping your second fire, which is pretty non-existent. You would just basically extend the left leg, but it doesn't provide you a ton of rotation. It's a very good thing that you don't slide, because at least you get a push in that direction, so that's better than nothing. But you don't get the rotation that should be coming from this hip. All right. Yeah, that was difficult topic, but I really think you can handle it, and that would be useful for you if you want to correct it in the next month. So I'll just sum up. Um, Less flared, narrower stance. Let the knee go a little bit. That will help having the left hip higher, stay into a little bit less of anterior pelvic tilt, and you'll be able to build more left lateral bend from there. So try to aim for that look at the top, like that look. You don't have to look crazy like this. It's all right, but try to match the position at least a little bit. And then you will replant closed. You already have the sacrum that's moving away from the target, so that's already really good. You're doing a good job. But when you will have this little bit mobility here, you will be able to replant closed and then fire through impact with, of course, a push like that. The adductors getting the feet together like this, of course, and you will also have rotation in this hip that comes with it. So you will lose all three good motions instead of just one, which is just a push from the left leg, which is not really helping you. Make sure that this kneecap doesn't want to turn. Doesn't want to turn. The pelvis should rotate way more than this kneecap. And then you'll be in a very good position to second fire. What you may feel when you'll do that is tension here, in this area. I'll explain, because you will feel it, and that might feel a little strange. I'm gonna explain what happens. Let's try to put Jamie again, because we'll see a ton of movement. Okay, we're gonna talk about the functional backline, coming from here, down into left hip, down here, and attaches here. So it's not exactly the same as the spiral line. It's another thing. But because this is moving there in this direction, the right shoulder is rotating, and this kneecap doesn't want to go. There is a lot of tension build up here. And when you will second fire, this tension will go. This foot will go off the ground, and then it will land here. The left foot will land in here, and you will have a ton of rotation thanks to that. So it's really normal if you try to have this kneecap fighting the rotation and this pelvis really rotating a lot. It's really normal to find that there is a big level of tension here and in your foot, and that you kind of have an urge to second fire. The more the sacrum will be back, the more this kneecap will tend to resist this pelvic rotation. The more right lateral bend you will have, the more you will tense up that fascia, the more the deeper you are relative to the ball. Like if you create a ton of depth, like going away from the ball and away from target, the more you're gonna stretch that fascia, and the more the knee stays a little bent, the more you'll feel tension. So that's all the ingredients that you could add up to tense this fascia and then have it serve you well through impact like that. I'm done with the left hip. Hang in there. Let's go to the right hip now. Alright, so I'm gonna bring JB here just for the sake of demonstration and showing you a few moves. So because you restrict the pelvis here, you won't get into fully internal rotation on this right hip, and it might not react exactly like it should. So because you are so wide, you need to stay centered. You cannot really shift right because it would really put you off balance. So again, narrower stance will help. Restricting that pelvis with this hip external rotation is problematic also to load properly that right hip. This right hip at the top should be internally rotated and extended. It's very important that you extend it because you don't rotate the pelvis ideally. You do not really extend the hips. You still have a lot of hip flexion here. And as I said, it matches the anterior pelvic tilt and the kind of right lateral bend-ish spine. But again, all this can be really way better in a few minutes if you release that pelvis and do everything I talked about. So this right hip is not loaded properly, and if you look at what happens, this right foot wiggle should be good. I'm gonna show it on JB. It should be good. It's actually I actually like to see that. JB is not the most the biggest guy to have it. Let's put Rory. Let's look at Rory if I have it. Maybe here. Nope. Yep. All right. All right. So we can see the right foot wiggle here. There. It's rotating a little bit, but it's rotating while the pelvis already changes direction. For you, it almost happens before. So this happens. So it's very fast. It's not really followed with pelvic rotation. And it's a lot, and it's happening on a foot that's already very flared. So what it tells me is that there is a lot of this to this, so abduction. There is also hip flexion. We can see it here. Like this angle is going to get narrow, like that, narrow, 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 like that. You're going down. The thing is that this knee is completely locked, like it doesn't flex. That prevents you from using this foot as an anchor point, and that way anything that happens in this hip, external rotation for instance, does not really act on your pelvis, so it doesn't really help you. It's happening too fast, too early, and from a position that's not proper. So what you really need to do is, okay, first narrow the stance, flare this right foot way less, get into a little more unrestricted pelvis, so you load it better, and then let it flex. If you don't let it flex, you're gonna flex from the hip, and then you'll have a very locked knee, and you'll end up having all the thing, instead of having this foot not moving and this pelvis benefiting from turning more, you have the pelvis not moving and these feet are getting the rotation from this hip. It's not that way. It's not supposed to happen. I definitely agree that wiggling the right foot, like we see here, is um, a telltale sign of proper spine moves. But for you, it's really not serving you well. You have a ton of rotation happening here and not much transmitting there. So you need to have that. So more pelvis rotation, and as he gets into flexion and external rotation, we can definitely see this kneecap going, well, this pelvis moving away from this, so there is external rotation in this hip. But because this foot is not moving and it's going, and this knee is going to proper flexion, everything is transmitted to the sacrum, helping it have more rotation. So let's put JB back on track. Where is JB? Is there? All right. So this would be the move that we're looking for. Flexion. Flexion in that knee. You already do the flexion. You already do the flexion in the hip, and the abduction, even though it might be a little too much, it might be happening because of the width of the stance. If you were narrower, I don't think you would abduct like that. Otherwise, you would slide a ton. If you had a ton of abduction, like this angle growing bigger and bigger and bigger, you would slide, and I'm pretty sure your body wouldn't allow that. So narrow strength will help again. Sorry for repeating myself. But yeah, this would be the move that you were looking for. Let's put somebody else here, somebody that does it well. Let's put Hovland here. There you go. So extended. Here, extended. Tilted shoulders. Extended. So left lateral bend to right lateral bend, and this knee is gonna flex. This hip is gonna flex. There you go. That makes this hip and this right foot the axis of rotation. So he can definitely create a ton of depth here, a ton of space for his arms and spine and everything. If you don't do that, the left hip becomes the center of rotation, and the only thing you try to do is rotate your right side of the pelvis and shut the door, if you will. You only have this way to go. If this hip is going to flexion, flexion, flexion in external rotation, this won't move, and the left side of the pelvis needs to go around there. And it's much more beneficial for, I mean, you know that. Beauty. So let's do a little sum up here. Let's put you back. Alright, so address narrower stance, way less flared feet. Takeaway: do not restrict that kneecap. Do not let that kneecap go, and try to get into this kind of position here with a little bit of internal rotation here. With the narrower stance, you'll be able to shift more right and load this hip properly, so it can extend a little bit more, so you can have this pelvis a little bit less tilted, and that way you will maybe be able to have more left lateral bend and benefit from it in transition. In transition, if that position got your left heel off the ground, that's really good. If it got your left heel rotating here and not rotating there, that's even better. That would be a very good indicator of the left spiral line, which is again from here in the back, here, here, here. It means that it's tensed up, and most likely you will look like this at the top, and it will give you a very bigger help in transition. The left lateral bend going from the left lateral bend going to right lateral bend will typically replant your left heel closer to the target. That will help your kneecap staying into this position. So left hip internal rotation. That's fought by sacrum rotation, and you have a very big stretch going on that will make this a thing in the past, and you will get way more rotation out of it. And lastly, allow that right knee to bend in transition. Do not lock it in place. Again, that might be because of the extreme wide stance that you don't allow it to flex. I haven't encountered this pattern so much, but if I try to replicate it on me, my right knee doesn't want to flex either if I have a very wide stance, so that might be the only reason why you do that. Alright, I hope it's not too much. Take your time to go through the video. Let me know if you have any questions, and don't worry, any day that you will improve, any centimeter that you will gain in the right direction, you'll benefit from it. So you can attack the problem in different ways. You can prioritize the left hip, you can prioritize the right hip if you want, you can prioritize the less APT, the more hip extension and left lateral bend in the backswing. You can prioritize pretty much anything. The setup, I would really make it priority number one, because it's done in 2 minutes, and then you won't have to think about it anymore ever. So let me know how it goes, and feel free to send more clips. And if you want, we can do a live lesson also to rehearse the movements and get you on the right track faster. All right, cheers. Have a good day, mate.